Okay, so thank you for everybody for showing up tonight. This is my umpteenth talk about the upcoming solar eclipse. This week was great. I was in Harrison Rye tonight, Chappaqua, and I love actually talking to my hometown Westchester folks after talking to so many people and visiting districts across the country. I was just in Denver recently for the National Science Teachers Association. So I'm really happy to be back talking to my own people, so to speak. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm excited because in actually less than 5 days, there's going to be a solar eclipse in New York State, and I'm heading up to Rochester. Excuse me, I have dealing with a respiratory thing for the past 3 weeks, which I'm sure some of you are too. I'm heading up to Rochester on Saturday for the weekend to work with the University of Rochester, RIT, and the University of Buffalo, my alma mater, in preparation for what will be upstate, a total solar eclipse, which I'm very excited about. Those of us in Westchester who stay in Westchester will see about a 91, 92% partial eclipse, which is pretty cool on its own. But if you really, really want to see the most outstanding, most life-changing event in your life, I would recommend hopping the train or getting on the road this weekend, or at the very latest, very, very early Monday morning before daybreak, and heading upstate to see totality. Excuse me. I hope some of you in my audience will be going up there. I'm going to be based in Canandaigua, New York, which is on top of Canandaigua Lake and the Finger Lakes, which is a quite beautiful site, which is in the path of totality. But I'll also be going to Buffalo on Sunday to take part in a panel discussion, and then to Rochester for the remainder of the weekend to help out with there. Hold on, Joan is on the phone one more time. You cannot get back in. Okay. Well, it's recording and everybody's here, so I'm just going to go ahead. Okay, thanks, Joan. Okay, Joan's out of the loop, unfortunately. If I'm going to keep my chat open, so if anybody has any real-time questions, please feel free to send them to me, and I'll be happy to answer them as soon as I can in real time. I am Charles Fulco. I teach in Valhalla Public Schools. I taught for a long time in Portchester Public Schools. Oh, there's Joan. Good to see you back, Joan. So I taught in Portchester. I ran the planetarium for a long time, and I'm also a NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador, JPL Jet Propulsion Lab out of the Caltech in Pasadena, and I'm also an American Astronomical Society National Eclipse Coordinator, which is a fancy way of saying I go around the country either virtually or in person talking to districts. I also started a program called No Child Left Inside because of my distress at seeing so many districts across the country choosing to keep kids trapped inside the classroom during an eclipse. And that includes prisoners as well. In fact, New York State just came out saying that even though they distributed eclipse classes to prisoners, they chose to keep them inside now, which means they're going to get a call from me tomorrow to argue that point. Anyway, I want to go ahead and talk about the eclipse on Monday, because the last time we had an eclipse, a total eclipse in New York State, was January 24th, 1925. And that was seen from Buffalo down through the southern tier. And it became known as the 86th Street eclipse in Manhattan because it was total above 86th Street and it was partial below 86th Street. And that was probably the time the closest we came to having an eclipse measured in meters as to where totality was visible and where totality was not visible. They had people stationed at rooftops from down in the 60s up to the 120s. And if you could see the corona and the sun blotted out, it was total. If you still saw part of the sun showing, it was not total. And you decided that the borderline was 86th Street. So that's pretty cool. So that was 99 years ago. And it's funny because at that time, if you read the New York Times articles about that eclipse, everybody was in the know. There was eclipse parties. It talks about how teachers were instructing kids and everybody was going to have a great time looking at the eclipse outside. And ironically, 99 years later, in the time of internet connectedness, ironically, we are keeping kids inside. So that's why I started my program called No Child Left Inside, which has had some benefits, trying to persuade superintendents and principals to keep students to allow students to be outside rather than being kept inside due to false information or eclipse fears. Oh, we just had some light flickering, so if I go away, it's due to the weather, not me. Um, God, I hope it stays like okay. Anyway, so No Child Left Inside has been I've been using that for not only regular ed, mainstream kids, but also for prisoner inmate students, as well as children that are hard of hearing and blind children as well. Kids who are kind of maybe you know either disenfranchised, left behind in the scheme of things when it comes to things like this. So I wish we had another eclipse coming up shortly, but we don't. We have to wait until 2045 for another cross-country eclipse, which is 21 years from now. That sounds a little better, actually. 2045 sounds so far away, but 21 years doesn't sound maybe terribly far away. Anyway, I want to get started by sharing the screen and talking about this eclipse and why it's really important that you get up to the path of totality. So let's take a look at this. And unfortunately, my sound is not working for the videos. I'm going to try it again. So if someone in the chat would please let me know if you can hear the sound, the audio from these embedded Eclipse videos I have. I'm going to start with the first one.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I was
fine.
able to tell us, I got back on,
Good.
but I can't do anything.
Oh, you can't? Okay. Okay. I'm going to see if people can hear this. I have the chat box open, so let's see if people can hear this. Here we go. Let's see if they can hear this. In fact, I don't even hear anything. I don't know why we have problems with this kind of thing. It worked fine in Rye. It did not work in Harrison, and it doesn't seem to be working tonight. I sort of put up a white flag when it comes to technology these days. I don't know why we can't hear this. I can't hear it.
Nobody's hearing anything.
All right. You know what then? All right. I'll see if I can. What I'll do is I will post that. If you could share this presentation with people, and then they could hear it on their own. So basically, what the videos were of people reacting to the total eclipse. When I show videos of the total eclipse, I always tell people, don't worry about what the video looks like because it'll never reveal the eclipse in its full glory. It does no justice to the eclipse. Listen instead to what people are, how they sound, how they're reacting, things like that. So when I share this with all of you, you can take it, listen at home in your own leisure. So tonight, what we're going to talk about is Eclipse basics, what you're going to look for and when to look for it, how to prepare yourself, and then we'll have a little Q&A as well. So I'm looking forward to that. So total eclipse, and again, I'm part of the media because I've written articles about eclipses for years, and I just wrote one for Westchester Magazine, and I've written for the National Wildlife Federation, other magazines, NSTA. So I'm part of the media. So, but when I say media, I'm talking about the media that has no idea what they're talking about, which unfortunately is a lot of people. And I've heard some really weird things about eclipses. So let me straighten them out for you. Firstly, eclipses occur about twice a year. They have to by purely celestial geometry. So there's at least two partial eclipses every year. One of them might be an annular, one of them might be a total. And if you stayed in one spot, on average, you'd have to wait about 375 years to get another total eclipse come to your neck of the woods. A lot of the media have misconstrued that to mean you have to wait another 375 years to see a total eclipse, which is completely not true because total eclipses occur about every 18 months or so on some part of the world. But think of the Earth's surface. On the Earth's surface, we have about 3/4 of that being ocean. Which logically means that 3/4 of the time, an eclipse path will be over the ocean. Eclipse paths also occur over mountainous regions, like say the Himalayas or the Andes. They can occur in the polar regions. They can occur in other inaccessible regions, and of course, unfortunately, due to countries that are dangerous to travel to. So this is why total eclipses seem very rare because we don't often see them due to those reasons. So the fact that we have another total eclipse coming to the US after only a 7-year hiatus is truly hitting the jackpot. Prior to 2017, we had a 38-year hiatus. with the eclipse over the Northwest in 1979. We did have a total eclipse visible over Hawaii in 1991, which I saw in Mexico. The same path occurred over Mexico. That was my first total eclipse. So total eclipses are not necessarily dark. They're dim, as I call them. It's like someone turned off the dimmer switch and you got it down really low. Colors on Monday in Westchester will turn a grayish, bluish kind of tint as the sun becomes maximally obscured to about its 92% phase. You're going to see shadows get very sharp. Animals will probably get a little bit disoriented, a little confused. Birds will go back to their nests. Your pets might get a little bit confused about like why is it getting dim at 3 o'clock, 3:15 in the afternoon. And I especially like human behavior because humans, even though we know what's coming, and especially with a total eclipse, we still can't make sense of it because totality is one of the coolest things, or if not the coolest thing you'll ever see in your life. I have been to 6 of them and I can't get enough of them. I always ask, the same question everybody else does: when's the next one? And in this case, it's 5 days from now or 4.5 days from now, which is really cool. After this one, we have to wait until 2033 to see another one in the US, but that's up in the far reaches of Alaska. Then we have one in 2044, which is rather inaccessible also. So 2045 is the one that I'm talking about that runs cross country, and it also crosses Disney World. So they're actually already calling it the Disney World eclipse. And I'm sure Disney will make full advantage of that in the next 20 years or so. So here's a very bad diagram, which they all are, because you're trying to show a 3-dimensional occurrence in a 2-dimensional scene. And of course, the Earth is nowhere near this size compared to the sun. And the whole thing's a train wreck when it comes to scale. But, it's like we use it to show basically what happens. So the moon has 2 parts to its shadow, because whenever you have a light source that's a disk, like the sun is, when it shines on a solid object, on a solid sphere, for instance, like the moon, you're going to get a 2-part shadow. You're going to get the inner part called the umbra, which is the darkest part of the lunar shadow. Then you're going to get the outer part called the penumbra, which is the lighter part of the shadow that most people will see. The penumbra is where you'll see a partial eclipse. The umbra is where you'll see a total eclipse. So in New York State, all of us will see at least a partial eclipse. We'll all have the penumbra fall upon us. In upstate New York, in a very relatively narrow path that's about 115 miles wide, from Niagara Falls, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, on through the Adirondacks to the Lake Champlain border, you'll see a total eclipse. And literally, the difference is night and day. One of the coolest coincidences in nature, at least to me, is the fact that geometrically, the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun, but it's also 400 times closer to us than the sun is. So those of you who like math can do the math, the mental math, and say, oh, that means they're going to appear to be the same size in the sky. There's no other place in the solar system where that happens. Mars has 2 moons, but they're very irregularly shaped. They're not a sphere like the moon is. Jupiter and Saturn, Uranus and Neptune, they have spherical moons, but they're so far away from the sun that you're not going to get the dramatic effect that we get from the sun. Venus and Mercury have no moons. So it's it for us. I mean, this is like so cool. And every time I see a total eclipse, it blows my mind, excuse me, that this coincidence takes place. If the moon were much larger, it would hide the corona and all the other beautiful aspects of an eclipse. If it were any smaller, we would have no total eclipses because the moon wouldn't appear large enough to cover the sun. We would have annular eclipses like of the type we had last October. So I'm all about coincidences, and I tend to think, are coincidences for real? Do they really exist? And this always blows my mind when I'm standing in the moon's shadow and I see that last bit of sun covered by a beautiful black spherical moon. I'm like, wow, the fact that we get this amazing coincidence of nature and it never escapes me. I show kids, let me see if this plays. Let's see if this plays. Yeah, here we go. So this shows how you can make a tennis ball to be the size of a much larger object just by bringing it closer to your eyes. And the same thing happens with an eclipse. The closer the moon is to us, the larger it appears. And conversely, the farther the moon is from us, the smaller it appears. So when you hear the media talk about a supermoon, that just means a moon that is actually looking larger than normal, and that would cause a total eclipse. A moon that is farther away than normal would not be able to cover the sun completely, and that would be an annular eclipse. Because the moon moves in a elliptical orbit and not a perfect circle. Okay, here's that diagram again, and let me go to here. This is oops. This is a really cool. Hold on one second. Let me go back. This is an interesting view of the eclipse because I don't know why it's doing this. Sorry, guys. I'll just leave it like that. This shows the moon looking from the far side of the moon toward the Earth, and you can see that the moon's shadow, the umbra, is conical, which means it comes to a point. And luckily for us, that point is long enough to reach the Earth a lot of times. And again, when the moon is farther away, that apex or the point of the conical shadow does not reach the Earth, and we have what's called an annular eclipse. So you can see that the moon is much smaller than the Earth. It's about 1/6 the size of the Earth. And the shadow is about 250,000 miles long on average. And then luckily for us, that means that it can sometimes touch the Earth and give us totality. This is from 2017, where the eclipse was total in the path from Oregon to South Carolina. You can show that your hand can produce a two-part shadow with a light bulb, because a light bulb is a sphere, it's a disc, and your hand will produce a umbra, and it will produce a penumbra. Let me go ahead here. Here's the path of the eclipse on Monday, starting from Mexico all the way through to Canada. The eclipse touches ground at Mazatlan, Mexico, which is coincidentally the site of my first eclipse with my family in 1991. That was my first totality, I should say. My first eclipse was March 7th, 1970. And that's what kind of got me started on this whole eclipse trek career path that I've taken. But my first totality was in Mazatlan in 1991. Unforgettable. I'll tell you why later. And again, Mazatlan gets graced with totality on Monday. But I was planning on actually being there with an astronomer friend of mine, Jay Pasakoff. A lot of you might recognize his name from National Geographic and other publications. He was a 50-year professor at Williams College. One of my dear friends, unfortunately, he passed away about 1.5 years ago. So I scrapped my plans to go to Mazatlan with him and his family. Instead, I'm going to stay in my own home state of New York and go to Canandaigua and Rochester and Buffalo and scope out those areas to see which place I really want to see totality from. The eclipse travels through 13 states. I should say the total eclipse travels through 13 states, with the partial eclipse being visible in all of the 48 lower states. Timeanddate.com is a really nice site. It shows you what the eclipse is going to look like, and it also tells you the time, the magnitude of the eclipse, magnitude meaning how much of the sun will be covered, and that's a really good site for other things too besides eclipses. Now, this is very interesting. I have friends that live in Toronto, and I said, you better get out of there because you're only going to get a 99.8% eclipse. And they're like, well, that's great. I'm like, well, not really. I would love to have gotten a 99.8% exam grade in every exam I've ever taken, but that didn't happen. But so I say that a 99.8 is a wonderful score on an exam, but it's not a great score for an eclipse, and here's why. Let's take a look at the eclipse as if you're using eclipse glasses. And you'll see that as we speed this up, the moon covers just about the entire part of the sun, except for a tiniest of slivers. And there you go. There's maximum right there. You're like, wow, that's got to be pretty cool, right? I mean, you know, that's almost as good as totality, or maybe as good as totality. And I'm going to tell you, it's not. And here's why. I'm going to show you the eclipse as if you're looking at it without eclipse glasses. And here we go again. Coming around to maximum eclipse. You're going to see the sun diminish, but not quite disappear. And there you go. So that's what you would see if you stayed in Toronto or any path that was outside the path of totality. Now let's take a look at what would happen in Buffalo, where I might be on Monday, and let's see what happens when you have totality. Here's the sun diminishing, getting smaller, getting smaller. Boom, there's totality. That's what you would miss if you stayed in Toronto or if you stayed in any other location that's outside totality. So when I say the difference is night and day, that's not just a figurative comment. It's actually a literal comment. One of my friends, Dan McGlon from Indiana, he's just got a brain that I wish I had. He created a website called eclipse2024.org, and on it he has what's called an eclipse simulator. And you could put in any site that you want, any town in the US. He spends his nights thinking of towns that he might have missed to put in the simulator. So I keep thinking, well, Dan, what about this town? What about this town? So pretty much, if you have relatives or friends in any town or city in the US, chances are you can find out what the eclipse is going to look like. So you would put the eclipse here. Let's see if we can try this out. We'll just go to it right now. We'll do it just off the cuff here. So go down to Eclipse Simulator right there. 2024 total eclipse. And I'm going to put in, let's do two things. Let's put in, since this is Chappaqua crowd, let's put in Chappaqua. There it is, New York. Launch the Eclipse Simulator. Oops, I have to hit agree. There we go. I can really hear the wind outside right now. It's amazing. Okay, I'm going to zoom the sun in. And then we're going to watch this is interesting because the bottom of the zoom thing is blocking me. So let me just move my zoom thing up here, get it out of the way. Okay, now we're going to speed the eclipse up and we're going to see what's going to happen this coming Monday. And this is assuming you have eclipse glasses. And notice the time on the bottom right. So there's maximum eclipse right about there. And that would be at approximately 3:23, figure, anywhere from 20 after 3 to 3:25 in the afternoon. The sun will appear to be almost 92% covered by the moon. And thinking like, wow, that's pretty cool, which it actually is. And unfortunately, as good as that is, you're not going to see any of the phenomena that you would see with totality upstate. So now let's put glare on. And
I
that's
just want to interrupt and say
Sure,
the
Joe.
library will be having we'll be giving out free sun eclipse
Eclipse
glasses. You could see them. We have many, and I think it said it starts at 2:11 in the
Yeah,
afternoon.
about 2:11. Yes.
Okay, so that's what it is, and I just wanted everybody to know. And we're going to be having a live streaming with NASA starting at 1:00 in the afternoon. And so we'll be able to see it that way too. And it'll be in the theater on our big screen. Okay.
Well, you've done your due diligence, Joe, and I'm very impressed.
I did it for all the West. I got a lot of stuff.
That's very cool. So let me get the glare off. Okay, so this is what it will look like for those of us who stay in the Westchester area. And let me just go up to, we're going to punch in Rochester. This is fun. This is like one of those rabbit holes you can actually go down into if you have a little time on your hands. It's actually a fun website. Let's do Rochester, New York. And now you'll see the difference between a partial eclipse and a total eclipse. Okay, let me move myself out of the way here. Grab the slider. And here's, now I'm going to bring it really close to totality. And then I'm going to let real time take over. So here we go. I'm going to go to click the play button over here on the left. And let's let the real time take over. And let's see what happens here. So this is about 3:20 in the afternoon for Rochester. And there goes the sun. Now let's put the glare on. Oops, let me back it up just a heartbeat. I'm just going to back it up just a tiny bit. I wanted to say this is called the diamond ring effect. The last bit of sunlight seen just before totality is called the diamond ring for obvious reasons because it looks exactly like a celestial diamond ring in the sky. And it is one of the cooler things you'll ever see in your life. And there it is. And then we have totality and watch the corona come out. That's Bailey's beads, the last bit of beads of sunlight shining through lunar valleys between the mountains. And there's the corona. So this is what I'm talking about. Partial eclipse is very cool. And I get some people can't leave the area. But if by any chance you can leave the area, maybe you could take a day off, take a sick day, play hooky. It's really, really amazing to be in the path of totality. It's actually life-changing. Once you see one, you get addicted. You want to see more. The first question you ask when totality is over is, when's the next one? I did that with my first one, and now I know when the next ones are because I'm going to go, hopefully, plans work out, to Spain in 2026 to see that one. Then there's one in 2027 over Northern Africa, and then so on. So about once every year and a half or so, you get totality. Now I'm going to speed this up just a little bit so you can see the end of totality. And you get a second diamond ring. And by the way, these gas jets right here are called prominences. And those are gas jets of hydrogen streaming off the sun's surface. And those are a beautiful neon pink color. They're actually wonderful to see. So here's the end of totality. So let me back it up just a second here. Okay, now we're going to watch the end of totality and watch for that second diamond ring to occur. And you're really always sad when that second diamond ring occurs because it signals the end of totality and it means here comes the sun back and you're like, oh darn, totality's over. And here comes the diamond ring. And that's when you got to put your filters back on. And again, I should stress at no time in Westchester or any place out of totality should you not be wearing your eclipse glasses or looking at the sun indirectly. Let me get back to my slideshow. I hope you enjoyed Dan's website. I think it's really, really cool. Let me just escape out of this.
Somebody said they didn't plan ahead. How close does the path come to us in Westchester?
Oh,
and
let me
is
show
there
you.
a place you could get glasses at the Chappaqua Library?
Yeah, you could get them obviously with you, Joan. You're supplying them, as you said.
Yeah.
Let me go to greatamericaneclipse.com. Let me put it in the box up here. Great American Eclipse is by my friend Michael Zeiler, who's a virtual cartographer. He's an amazing guy. He's retired now, so he's got time on his hands to be able to do things like this. And I'm going to punch in New York. Go by state. There's a map right there. But let's get a little closer. Let's go to New York. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so we're down here, and you need to drive about 4.5, 5 hours, maybe more, depending on traffic, up to here. Syracuse is the farthest west big city in the path. The eclipse tracks from the western part of New York. Let me see if I can slide this over. Okay, so the eclipse begins down here, like by Chautauqua Lake, and it goes from Buffalo, Niagara Falls, through Rochester, through Syracuse, up through the Adirondacks, and then it goes into Vermont at the border. So you really, really need to drive up the Thruway or Route 7. I'm taking Route 17 up through Corning, 390, and if that's crowded, I'm going to get onto my little local routes that I learned when I was going to college in Buffalo, how to get to Buffalo without using a highway. So I'm going to be ending up in Canandaigua, which is right there. And Canandaigua is a beautiful little town, and it's about a half hour outside of Rochester. And again, I want it to be outside the city just because total eclipses are very special to me. I'm very sentimental about them. I like to experience them in different ways. And I've experienced, I think, every eclipse around a lot of people. This eclipse, I might want to only have my family and close friends around to experience it, just to see the difference. Large crowds are fun, but the last time in McKanda, Illinois, they blared loud music during totality, which I wanted to rip the speakers out of the wires. And I don't want that to happen again. So I might want to just experience it, in a very pristine setting, maybe with Canandaigua's lake right there and everything. Some people are choosing to go to Tupper Lake. George Latimer, our county executive, I gave him glasses. He's going up to this area right here. A bunch of my colleagues are going to this area. Most of us are going to be in the Western New York area right there. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, next slide. This is a kind of a difficult spatial concept, the fact that we know the moon orbits the Earth about once every 29 and a half days. And I think we all learned that in elementary school or middle school or high school. But the thing is, when the new moon is between the Earth and the sun, why don't we get an eclipse every month? And here's the reason. The moon orbits the Earth at about a 5-degree tilt, which means that 5 months out of 6 on average, the moon is either too high above the Earth for its shadow to touch the Earth, or it's too low below the Earth for the shadow to touch the Earth. But every once in a while, the moon will cross what's called the node of the Earth's orbit, meaning that the Earth's orbit and the moon's orbit are actually in line. And that's called an eclipse season. We have 2 eclipse seasons a year, about 6 months apart. This eclipse season obviously is in April, and then we're going to have another one in October. And only during that time of the year will the moon and sun and Earth be exactly in a straight line. So take a look over here. And right there, you can see the moon is too far south of the Earth for the moon's shadow to strike the Earth. Now watch what happens, though, as we go into an eclipse season. The moon will swing around again to another what's called lunation. The lunation means one new moon to one new moon. And here you're going to see that right there, we're in an eclipse season now, where the moon's shadow does strike the Earth, and it traces a path across the Earth from local sunrise in the morning to local sunset in the evening. It takes about 3.5 hours for the moon's shadow to cross the Earth. So that's why we don't have an eclipse every new moon. And, sometimes things are very counterintuitive. And it's okay if you don't notice, because who would? So here's another static example showing that when you have a full moon over here, which can cause a lunar eclipse, most times the moon is too far above the Earth's shadow or too far below the Earth's shadow for an eclipse. But sometimes just right here and here, 6 months apart, you'll have the moon and sun and Earth exactly in line. And again, here's the moon's umbra, which is conically shaped, and the moon's penumbra, which spreads out. Now we come to the part where you got to put your thinking caps on, because this is a very spatial concept. This is called the Saros cycle. When the Saros cycle was discovered, it brought a whole new knowledge to eclipse chasing, because millennia ago, when the Babylonians, Sumerians, Asians discovered that eclipses do recur in predictable patterns, everything changed. Now we knew when there was going to be an eclipse happening. Up to then, people thought eclipses were random happenstances. They just occurred whenever they wanted to. And back then, people thought a dragon was eating the eclipse. They thought maybe the gods were unhappy with humans, which they probably should be at this point. And they decided to take the sun away from us. But once we discovered that eclipses do occur in predictable and repeating patterns, that opened up a whole door to eclipse predictions. And we still use the Saros cycle today because it works. The Saros cycle, Saros is a Greek word meaning repetition or repeat. And it's a good word because eclipses do repeat in 18-year, 11-day, and 8-hour cycles. From one interval of the Saros to the next, you're going to have a very similar eclipse taking place. For instance, this eclipse on April 8th, 2024, if you go back one Saros cycle, 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, you'll come to March 29th, 2006. On that date, a very similar path occurred of an eclipse, duration, magnitude, the amount of sun that was how much larger the moon was compared to the sun. And that occurred over Libya. I remember watching that live on the live stream when I was actually running the Portchester Planetarium. And if you add one Saros interval to this one, you come up with April 19th, 2042, I believe. One of my students last night in the library in Rye calculated it. And sure enough, we went to find out, and there it was. So once you know the Saros cycle, you can just do it in your head as to when there was an eclipse in the past or when there's going to be an eclipse in the future. Eclipses belong to what's called the Saros family. They give them numbers. For instance, my favorite Saros family is 136. That produced the longest total eclipses of the 20th century, including the famous eclipse in 1919 that made Albert Einstein a famous household name. Some of you who like history and astronomy might recall that Eddington, a very famous astronomer of his day, traveled to eastern Brazil to see that 1919 total eclipse. And he took glass plates of that eclipse to prove Einstein's prediction that starlight can be deflected by the sun's gravitation. And he proved that by his photographs that his results were within acceptable limits of Einstein's theory. And within 6 months, Einstein was literally a worldwide name. So the eclipse of 1919 also, again, here's another coincidence. It was a wonderful happenstance that the sun of all days of the year, May 29th, 1919, happened to be in the constellation of Taurus the Bull, but very close to the Hyades star cluster and very close to the Pleiades star cluster. If it happened any other day or time of the year, the sun would not have been around so many stars, and it would have been much harder to prove Einstein's theory. So, go figure, right? It's pretty incredible. So Saros 136 produced 5 totalities in the 20th century, and I saw 3 of them. Well, I saw 2 of them, and I experienced one of them until the live feed from Africa was cut short by a sandstorm. On June 30th, 1973, I was with my mom and sister at the Museum of Natural History, the Hayden Planetarium, and we were getting a live feed of the eclipse from Mali until a sandstorm kicked up, and that was that. So then I had to wait until 1991 to see the next iteration of Saros 136. We saw that from Mazatlan, Mexico. And then I went to Shanghai in 2009 to see the next iteration of Saros 136, which was completely clouded over, unfortunately, but it was still the darkest eclipse I'd ever experienced. The next iteration of Saros 136 will be in 2027 over Northern Africa, and I hope to see that one as well. So there's your tough, geometrical eclipse lesson for tonight. It'll get easier from now on, I promise. Here's some paths of similar Saros series from 136. You can see how the paths are similar in shape. The only difference is that they shift the location by 120 degrees. That's the 8 hours. Within 8 hours, the Earth turns 120 degrees on its axis. Therefore, an eclipse seen in our neck of the woods will be seen 120 degrees west during over the next Saros period, and then 120 degrees west after that. So after 3 Saros periods, or triple Saros, the eclipse comes back to our longitude area. So the eclipse that I saw on March 7th, 1970, if you add 18 years and 11 days and 8 hours, 3 times, you get 54 years, 1 month, and 1 day. And that's what's going to happen on Monday. I'll have seen my first triple Saros, and I think that's pretty cool. Going from an 8.5-year-old kid who's being told to stay inside because you'll go blind if you watch an eclipse, if you're even outdoors, let alone forget watching it. Just the fact you're outdoors could blind you, and we'll get into that in a few seconds, to being someone whose life was changed by eclipses and now have taught them for decades. My whole goal of being a teacher and No Child Left Inside is to make sure that kids, and especially kids, get to watch eclipses outdoors where they should be. Adults are old enough to know to do that on their own, hopefully, and no one's going to tell them to stay inside. So there's many ways you can do it. You can construct an eclipse
I have a
viewer.
question.
Sure.
Somebody said they thought that if we don't receive sunlight for 8 minutes, that life ends. Is that a myth?
Well,
I
I
mean,
think the 8 minutes comes from the fact that the sun is 8 light minutes away from the Earth. So if the sun were to suddenly go out instantaneously, it would take 8 minutes for us to know that. But it depends how long. Obviously, if we don't receive sunlight for days, or look what happened to the dinosaurs, when that comet or asteroid hit the Earth in the Yucatan, it spewed up all kinds of particulate matter into the atmosphere, causing a global extinction of many different species, including dinosaurs. So all because plants died. And if plants die, we're going to die. Animals will die because we eat plants, or we eat the animals that eat plants. So I would say would have to go probably, days, weeks, and months before you'd see mass extinction like we did with the dinosaurs. And even with mass extinction happening some 65 million years ago, cockroaches, turtles, horseshoe crabs, all the things that look prehistoric obviously lived through that. So depends on, I would say it depends on the species. That's a good question. Joan, any other questions?
Yes, there's a couple. I wanted to interrupt for that one.
Sure, go ahead.
Somebody said, well, this they were worried about the cloud cover for this on April 8th. Will there be cloud cover? I read that there wasn't going to be any cloud cover on April 8th.
I don't answer those questions because I don't want to answer those questions. We'll have to wait till April 8th to see. And that's my answer. And I don't answer weather questions.
I read also that the whole eclipse lasts about 6 minutes. Is that right?
The total eclipse 6 minutes? No, I'd be in heaven if that were the case. In New York State, the total eclipse will last about 3.5 minutes in Buffalo, which is not bad. My mother and sister and I saw a totality in Mexico that lasted 6 minutes and 52 seconds. And that was like going to heaven, because we won't get that again until the year 2132. Anytime you get a total eclipse in the realm of 4 minutes, 5 minutes or greater, you're talking like amazing duration.
Okay.
Yes.
Will animal
it's amazing
behavior
how
change?
rumors get started. See, this is what I'm talking about.
Will animal behavior change during the eclipse?
Yeah, mostly human
partial
behavior.
Eclipse?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're getting 90% plus. So yeah, birds will probably want to go back to their nests. Cats and dogs might exhibit some strange behavior, like why is it getting dim? It won't get dark. It'll get dim, not dark.
Right.
Why is it getting dim in the daytime? Birds, especially, my favorites to watch because they really make a squawk of things. Cicadas, if it were August, the cicadas would stop chirping. Crickets might start chirping. Depends on the season. Yeah, I would certainly look around. If you're outside looking around, see what animals are doing, but watch what humans are doing. Humans get very freaked out. In fact, I'm sad to say this, and I hope she's not watching. I'm sure she's not. But a secretary in Portchester business office today, Portchester Public Schools, was afraid of this eclipse. She was afraid to go outside. So I sarcastically told her to make sure you pull your blinds so you're not permanently affected by the evil eclipse rays bouncing off the building next to you. So I don't know why an adult would be afraid of an eclipse. It makes me actually scared to think that people of my age would be afraid of an eclipse. But this is the state of science in this country, which is why I started No Child Left Inside, which I'm going to continue indefinitely after this eclipse.
And just again, people are asking where to go where's the place to drive to see the totality near Albany.
I showed the map before.
Okay, but
I'll show it again.
Okay.
There. You got to here's your southern limit right there. You got to be above this line. Anything below this line, you're going to be left out in the light, so to speak. You're only going to see a partial eclipse. I've been to Shanghai, Patagonia, Salzburg, Mexico, and Carbondale to see an eclipse. To have totality in my own state is incredible. This is like a walk in the park for me to get up here. I've traveled, 24,000 miles round trip to see the totality. So when people say, should I go upstate to see it? I tell them that, like, why would you not go upstate to see it? Why would you not want your life to be changed?
All
So
right.
that's my
So,
answer.
but we will have it at the library, a live streaming from NASA, the National Aeronautic and Space Administration.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you're welcome to go outside. We have a courtyard. We're expecting a lot of people, and you will see a partial eclipse. And then
right.
you can just go into the library and see the total eclipse.
Exactly. I mean,
Somebody,
I'm a totality or nothing person. If there's a chance I could see totality, I will always take it. I will never stay in the zone of partial eclipse.
well, somebody asked, will it get cold?
It'll drop about 10 degrees Celsius, maybe. Depends on what the weather is, what the temperature is, what the humidity is. I always take a temperature reading every 5 minutes on either side of totality for about a half hour, and you always get a dip. Clouds will dissipate, thankfully, unless there's a front. If you have a front, that will not dissipate, but cumulus clouds will dissipate. Thank God. That saved my my eclipse trip to Salzburg in 1999 when it was raining an hour before totality, and I noticed the clouds were cumulus, not like altostratus or anything. And sure enough, the clouds went away just in time for totality. Then they came back just after totality. Probably a few prayers on my part helped that too, I think, but who knows? And again, I have some other things besides eclipse glasses you can use. You can use a pasta colander, hold this over a white sheet, a bed sheet, and you'll see all the holes in here causing little mini eclipse images to appear on the ground. You can also do, by the way, this is what I use when I talk to eclipse school superintendents and principals and science chairs when they don't want the kids to go outside. I'm like, wait, you're telling me that pre-K and first grade and second grade kids can use this, but you don't trust a science teacher with high school kids or middle school kids or elementary kids to watch an eclipse safely? So I try to shame them. I make no bones about it. I've been teaching 28 years. I have no tolerance for ignorance or stupidity. And unfortunately, in my profession, there's enough of that to go around. So I try to correct that with as much grace as possible. But sometimes I lose my temper, and I just try to explain to people why it's ridiculous and criminal to keep kids inside during an eclipse. There's a type of eclipse glasses. You can also use these types right here. Either type is acceptable as long as it has a CE ISO rating on it. You could also show eclipse to groups of people by projecting your eyepiece onto vellum, onto a simple funnel with a piece of vellum over it. You can also do, punch out holes in a cardboard sheet. You can punch out your date, your name, your school. It's a nice keepsake. You can stand under a tree. I noticed a bunch of trees are now leafing out in our area, probably because of global warming. So take advantage of that and stand under a tree. You can see eclipse crescents all over the place, which is pretty cool. And there's 1963 on the left and 2017 on the right. And kids have to know patterns in the sky by first grade, which I think is good according to next gen science standards. And there's your temperature change. You can also measure ambient light change by purchasing a photometer, a simple photographer's light meter, which is kind of cool to use. And there's me in 2017 at my niece's school in Naperville, Illinois, having a great time. These are prisoners I worked with in October, watching the annular eclipse on October 14th and reporting back to me the lesson plans I left for them. And they did spectacularly. And then again, if you have eclipse glasses, and these are permanent ones. These are ones that look like actual sunglasses, but they're eclipse glasses actually. So these are durable. I like these a lot. And again, Great American Eclipse.com sells those. If you see any pinholes of light shining through your eclipse glasses, immediately throw them away. It means they're no good. You can have bends or creases in the mylar, but you can't have pinholes. And again, Joan is doing a wonderful thing at the Chappaqua Library. hosting an eclipse session on Monday. You can make pinhole viewers out of a cardboard box. I thought I had one here, and all of a sudden I don't see it. We made those in school today. Take a shoebox. I like FedEx mailing tubes. They're long. The longer the tube, the box, the larger the sun's image will be. I have directions on that, which I'm going to post to my scienceinsideout.com page, which is a very rudimentary website. I started it mostly for ordering Eclipse classes, but it's going to become a really good website over the next month or so. So if you go to scienceinsideout.com this weekend, I will post all kinds of Eclipse sites and links and resources there. Again, if you're close to totality, drive there. If you ask me if you should go, I'm going to say, why wouldn't you go? Why would not you want your life changed? How come you wouldn't want to have the most memorable thing in your life happen to you? So, I'm the wrong person to ask if you're looking for an opinion, because I'm going to tell you to get in your car and drive, or get in a plane, or get on a train if you're worried about traffic. And again, if you're a teacher, please make sure that you clear everything with your superintendent or principal or science chair. Make sure there's no surprises on Monday morning or afternoon saying, you're not going to let me out. If that happens, please call me. I will get very upset with them and basically try to have them let you guys get outside. Have an amateur astronomer talk to your class, things like that. So I'm going to end it now because we're running out of time. But if we have any question and answer, I'm going to bring up my chat box.
I think I've gotten them all, but I do want to mention that I heard that most of the schools are letting the children out at about 1:30.
Yes, they are. Actually, yeah, I made
And
sure my
so-
school in Valhalla was, yes.
Somebody asked if you could type in the two websites on the chat
Sure.
function, that would be great.
Sure, I'll do that right now.
And I do want to mention that if you would go to Chappaqua Library website, not only will you see all the programs that we offer, and we have a huge number of programs, you'll see some links that you might need. So that would be chappaqua.library.org.
I'm going to put eclipseophile.com. That's for the person who asked about weather. Eclipseophile.com is all about weather. So that's by Jay Anderson in Canada, who's one of my friends and the preeminent meteorologist in Canada. Thank you for the nice comments. I appreciate that. Joan, I'm going to also send you other things too that you might maybe want to use on Monday and stuff.
That would be great.
Thank you, Gail, for saying it's very interesting. I appreciate that. And obviously my voice is shot talking all month about this. So I hope everybody, I'm sorry, Joan, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I hope everybody has a wonderful eclipse. If by any chance you can get upstate, Rochester is going to have an amazing weekend of events for kids, families, adults, museums, food, culture, crafts, poster making. I'll be taking part in that. I'll be taking part in Buffalo events. By all means, get yourself up there. You will thank me later on. You will never forget it. And if you can't get up there, by all means, make sure you get to see at least the partial eclipse. Thank you, Joan, for having me. I really appreciated this.
Okay. And I want to say, yes, this has been videotaped and it will probably be up probably by the end of the week. So you could look at it over the weekend and you could tell your friends to go to our website, which is chappaqua.library.org, and view the tape. So I wish you all a wonderful time. As I say, glasses are available at the library, one per family. And the day of the eclipse, if you're going to be at the library for the eclipse, we also have more glasses to give out. I think, and then we'll be viewing the NASA live streaming. And with that, I wish you all, who is ever driving, safe driving and not too much traffic, and you should be okay. So thank you all for coming.
8 o'clock tonight on Nova. There's a special on the eclipse at 8 o'clock tonight, channel 13, I believe.
Okay, we have just enough time. You're ending it's 2. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful evening, and I hope you don't lose electricity like I did.
Thank you, Joan.
Sorry about that.
Stay safe. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.